There's a special kind of magic that lingers in our memories of school. It's not just the teachers, the subjects, or even the friendships. It's the little things we carried with us every day. The smell of chalk dust, the sound of pencils scratching on paper, the clunk of a lunchbox on a wooden desk. For children growing up in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, classrooms were filled with supplies that shaped the rhythm of learning, yet most of them have vanished without a trace. Some were messy, some were awkward, and some were surprisingly elegant, but each one is a piece of history. Like snapshots from an old photo album. They may be gone, but they're not forgotten. Today we're looking at 30 forgotten school supplies every kid used in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Let's open the time capsule and begin. Number 1, teen paste jars with wooden sticks before glue bottles lined classroom shelves. Kids in the 50s and 60s had something a little messier, jars of paste with wooden sticks. These jars were squat, glass containers filled with a thick, almost doughy paste that smelled faintly sweet. Every desk seemed to have a project where you dip the stick into the jar and smear it across construction paper, hoping it held your cutouts in place. Inevitably, it got everywhere, on fingers, desks, even clothes. Teachers warned kids not to taste it, but of course, many did anyway. There was a strange belief that paste was harmless, so some children even treated it like candy. It was an era when mess was part of the learning process, and nobody worried too much about sticky hands. Eventually, paste jars gave way to cleaner glue bottles and later to glue sticks in the 1980s. Still, for those who remember, the act of dipping that little wooden stick into a jar of paste was part of the school experience itself, a messy, funny, and oddly comforting ritual. Number 2, high chalkboard erasers. The chalkboard was the centerpiece of every classroom, and with it came a tool that every child secretly wanted to handle, the felt chalkboard eraser. Stacked neatly on the ledge beneath the board, these rectangular blocks soaked up white chalk dust until they were heavy with powder. At the end of the day, the teacher would pick one lucky student to take them outside and clap them together. There was something oddly satisfying about smacking those erasers, watching clouds of chalk explode into the air like smoke from a tiny cannon. Kids loved the break from classwork, loved the freedom of stepping outside into the fresh air for a few minutes. Some even used the chore as a chance to draw little pictures in the chalky haze. Of course, it wasn't the cleanest task. Hands came back covered in dust, and clothes often bore white smudges. Today, whiteboards and projectors have erased the chalkboard from most classrooms, but the memory of clapping erasers is burned into the childhood of millions. Number 3, the wall. Mounted pencil sharpener. Every classroom had one, usually bolted to the wall near the teacher's desk or hanging by the door. The heavy metal pencil sharpener with its rotating handle was as much a fixture of school life as the American flag at the front of the room. Students would line up with their dull pencils, eager for a turn to crank the handle and hear the grinding sound as the blades shaved wood into perfect curls. It wasn't just about sharpening. Walking up to the sharpener was a tiny break in the monotony of class, a chance to stretch your legs and maybe glance around the room. Many kids even broke pencils on purpose just for the excuse. Of course, not every sharpening went smoothly. Sometimes the lead snapped, sometimes the pencil jammed, and sometimes you ended up with a lopsided point. But the ritual of turning that handle was something every student knew by heart. Over time, electric sharpeners and mechanical pencils made the wall-mounted sharpener obsolete. But for those who grew up in mid-century classrooms, the sound of grinding blades is forever tied to the memory of school. Number 40. Marble composition notebooks. Few school supplies carried as much weight, literally and figuratively, as the marble composition notebook. Thick, heavy, and bound with a stiff black and white marbled cover, these notebooks felt official, almost like legal documents in the hands of a child. Teachers often required them for writing assignments, math work, or science notes. Opening one was like opening a blank world of possibility. Pages quickly filled with equations, essays, doodles, and, in some cases, notes passed between friends. The spines grew worn, the covers bent, and the corners frayed, but the notebooks themselves seemed indestructible. They represented permanence in a child's otherwise fleeting school life. While still sold today, Their presence has faded as laptops and tablets dominate classrooms. But for anyone who used one, the sight of that marbled cover brings a rush of memory, reminding us of the sound of pencils scratching on paper and the quiet pride of filling up page after page with our own words. Number 50, ink pens with cartridges. Long before disposable ballpoint pens filled pencil boxes, many students in the 50s and 60s carried fountain pens with refillable ink cartridges. These pens were elegant tools, teaching precision and patience. Loading a cartridge required care, because one wrong squeeze could leave your fingers, and sometimes your shirt, stained with blue or black ink. For some kids, it was a frustrating mess. For others, it felt like a rite of passage, a small step toward adulthood. The smooth glide of a fountain pen across paper made even ordinary homework feel more important. But the pens were expensive compared to ballpoints, and they weren't exactly childproof. By the 1970s, cheap disposable pens became the classroom standard, leaving cartridge pens behind. Yet, in memory, they hold a special place, symbols of a time when writing by hand still carried a sense of ceremony. Number 60, slide rules. Before the calculator revolution, students learned math with a slide rule. At first glance, it looked like a ruler, but it was far more sophisticated. By sliding different parts against each other, students could calculate multiplication, division, and even logarithms. For many, it felt like unlocking a secret code. Complex, intimidating, but powerful. Teachers often expected older students to master them, and it took real skill to use one quickly. They weren't just tools, they were badges of academic seriousness. Carrying a slide rule in your book bag meant you were ready for high-level math or science. But as pocket calculators arrived in the 1970s, the slide rule quickly faded from classrooms. Today, it feels like a relic, but for those who learned with it, the slide rule was an essential part of growing up, one that demanded patience, practice, and a little bit of math magic. Number 7, the Crayola 64 box with built-in sharpener for art time. Nothing matched the thrill of opening a brand new Crayola 64 count box of crayons. Not only did it contain every color a child could dream of, shades with names like cornflower and burnt sienna, but it had a little sharpener built right into the back. That sharpener wasn't perfect, but it felt like a treasure. Kids proudly displayed their 64 box as a status symbol. It meant you had every possible option for coloring maps, posters, or art projects. Some colors were used constantly until they were tiny stubs. Others, like gold or silver, were saved for special occasions. The smell of the crayons, the feel of the wax, and the ritual of sharpening them all became part of the memory. While children today still use crayons, the excitement of owning that iconic 64 box is something unique to the mid-century generation. Number 80, Mimeograph worksheets. Before copy machines became standard, teachers relied on mimeographs to make worksheets. The process involved typing or writing onto a special stencil, and then cranking it through a machine that pressed ink onto paper. The result was a stack of sheets in purple ink with a distinctive chemical smell. Every child who went to school in those decades remembers that scent. Some kids even held the paper up to their noses, taking in the strange, sweet smell before working on the assignment. The ink sometimes smudged, and the text was never perfectly crisp, but mimeographs gave classrooms a special atmosphere. They were part of the rhythm of daily lessons. Spelling tests, math drills, and handouts all bore that purple stamp. By the 1980s, photocopiers replaced mimeographs, but those purple ink pages remain a powerful symbol of school in the mid-20th century. Number 90, the overhead projector. When the teacher wheeled in the overhead projector, the classroom changed. The humming fan, the warm light, and the giant image on the screen felt futuristic in the 60s and 70s. Teachers wrote on clear plastic sheets called transparencies, and the words glowed larger than life for everyone to see. For students, the projector had its own magic. Kids giggled at the shadows of their hands when they passed in front of the light. The sound of a new transparency being laid down, the squeak of marker on plastic, was part of the classroom soundtrack. Over time, digital projectors and smart boards replaced them, but the overhead projector was once the height of classroom technology. It brought lessons to life in a way nothing else could, and for those who grew up with it, the memory is inseparable from the school experience itself. Number 100, The classic metal lunchbox with Thermos. Technically, a lunchbox wasn't a learning tool, but it was still a vital part of school life. In the 50s, 60s, and 70s, kids carried sturdy metal lunchboxes decorated with their favorite TV shows, superheroes, or movie characters. Inside, a glass-lined thermos kept milk, soup, or juice ready for lunchtime. Opening your lunchbox was a daily ritual. The clang of the latch, the sight of your peanut butter sandwich, maybe a cookie wrapped in wax paper. It was a moment of comfort in the middle of the school day. The lunchbox wasn't just practical, it was personal, a way to show a little individuality in a world of uniforms and rules. By the 1980s, plastic lunchboxes began to replace the metal ones, but those clunky, colorful boxes remain icons of school days gone by. Number 11, team book satchels and leather straps. Before backpacks became the norm, students often carried their books tied together with a leather strap or tucked into a small satchel. The strap kept everything bundled neatly, though it wasn't exactly comfortable on long walks home. Still, there was something classic about the look of a child carrying books tied with a strap. A scene straight out of Norman Rockwell. Satchels, often made of brown leather, felt more grown up, like miniature briefcases. They carried not just textbooks, but pencils, lunch, and sometimes marbles or baseball cards hidden inside. By the late 70s, nylon backpacks took over with their zippers and shoulder straps, but those earlier carriers are forever tied to the image of mid-century school kids. Number 120A, Big Chief tablets. The Big Chief writing tablet was a staple of elementary classrooms. Its bright red cover, featuring a Native American chief, was instantly recognizable. Inside, the wide, ruled pages were perfect for children just learning to write. Every letter practice, every spelling word, every doodle. Big Chief tablets were filled with the messy beginnings of handwriting. The paper was soft, the lines bold, and the pages often tore if you pressed too hard with your pencil. Still, they were beloved, a rite of passage in early school years. By the 80s, cheaper generic notebooks replaced them, and the brand faded into memory. But for those who learned their ABCs in a Big Chief tablet, it will always carry a sense of first beginnings. Number 3010E, library card catalogs. Before computers made searching simple, every school library had a card catalog. Long wooden drawers filled with index cards. Each card contained details about a book author, title, and subject. Students had to learn how to search alphabetically and by subject headings to find what they needed. It was a skill in itself, requiring patience and practice. Pulling out a drawer, flipping through the cards, and then walking across the room to find the matching book was part of the process of research. The sound of the drawers sliding, the feel of the worn cards, all of it is part of the memory of school libraries in the mid-century. By the 1990s, computers made card catalogs obsolete, but for earlier generations, they were a doorway to the world of books. Number 14, Hain flashcards. For drills in classrooms of the 50s and 60s, learning often came through repetition, and nothing symbolized that better than flashcards. Teachers held up cards with math problems, vocabulary words, or sight words, and students answered in unison or took turns. It was a simple but powerful method. The rhythm of flipping the cards, the suspense of waiting for your turn, and the pride of shouting out the correct answer all made flashcard drills memorable. Kids sometimes groaned at the repetition, but it worked, and it created a classroom energy unlike anything digital tools can replicate. Today, flashcards still exist, but they've largely moved to apps and screens. The physical stack of cards, worn from handling, is now a symbol of an older way of learning. Number 15, filmstrip projectors. Before video became common, teachers used film strips. Short reels of still images projected one frame at a time. Often an accompanying record or cassette tape would beep when it was time to advance to the next image. Watching a film strip was an event. The room would darken, the machine would whir, and the images would appear one by one. Sometimes the teacher advanced the strip too early, sometimes too late, but that was part of the charm. Lessons on history, science, or health all came through those glowing pictures. By the 80s, VHS tapes began to replace film strips and later DVDs, but for students of the mid-century, the film strip projector was an unforgettable classroom experience. And that's our journey through those forgotten school supplies from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. They weren't just tools for learning, They were time machines carrying a